Hey gang, Dennis Tubbergen here with another economic update. Today is Wednesday, May the 9th, 2018. I have an article on the screen today that was published back in December of 2017. So let's just say it was published about 4.5 months ago. The headline on the article reads, Argentina accepts faster inflation in bid to boost economy. Now what does that mean? They have decided to essentially create more money, create inflation in an effort to get the economy jump started. Now, this whole economic policy is, in my view, and in the view of a lot of other folks out there, just pure folly. Why do economies slow down? Well, economies slow down because there's too much private sector debt. Private sector debt reaches a point that it consumes too much of tomorrow's production to service the debt, and economies just naturally slow down. So to make the point clear, let's say that you go pay cash for a car, and in order to pay cash for that car, you have money in the bank from prior activity, from prior work, from prior production. You save some of that prior production or economic energy in order to spend it today for a car. On the other hand, let's say your best friend goes out and buys the same car you do, but because she doesn't have money in the bank from past production, she elects to make payments on the car. In order to make payments on the car, she's got to go to work tomorrow and produce something. She's got to expend economic energy in order to make payments on the car. So the point here is that your friend is consuming some of tomorrow's production. You are consuming past production. Well, when private sector debt levels get too high collectively, what it means is that too much of tomorrow's production gets consumed. And if you're consuming a lot of tomorrow's production, that means that you can't grow. So that's essentially what's going on worldwide. We've got all these private sector debt levels that have reached these huge, significantly high levels. And economies and central banks, rather, are trying to jumpstart economies by creating more money. Well, creating more money doesn't solve a debt problem. In fact, Argentina, in this article, this is remarkable. Their inflation target was 8 to 12%, and in December they decided they needed to try to create 15% inflation in order to jumpstart the economy. Well, they kind of overshot their target. This is from Miss Shedlock's blog, and this is just from yesterday. And he talks about the fact that Argentina now has gone to the International Monetary Fund to say, hey, can you bail us out again? Why? Because the peso is devaluing significantly. There's huge inflation. They overshot their inflation target, and the central bank increased interest rates to 40% in order to try to curb inflation. That's what happens. And when the inflation problem is solved, the debt still exists, and you still have to deal with the debt. It happened in Weimar Germany. It happened in 18th century France 2 different times, once under John Law and once just prior to Napoleon rising to power. And it's happening all around the world today because this is the dominant, the prevalent economic model. Now, if we would just pay attention to what we were taught by the founding fathers, Thomas Jefferson told us this would happen. Thomas Jefferson said this over 200 years ago. He said, if the American people ever allow private banks to control the issue of their currency, and that's what the Federal Reserve is. The Federal Reserve is a group of private bankers. And back in 1913, Congress and then President Woodrow Wilson thought it would be a really good idea to give private bankers control of U.S. monetary policy, as if these private bankers are going to have your best interests ahead of their own. Jefferson said, if the American people ever allow private banks to control the issue of their currency, first through inflation, then by deflation, the banks and corporations that will grow up around them will deprive the people of the very continent their fathers conquered. Too bad we're not listening, but all you can do now is look to protect yourself. And one of the best strategies to consider is deflation-proof your portfolio. Have some assets that when deflation kicks in, and what's happened in Argentina? The worst case scenario. Stocks and bonds have crashed and currency has crashed. So you need assets that aren't going to crash from deflation, and you need to hedge your purchasing power from inflation. So the answer to the question, are we going to have inflation or deflation, is likely yes, and you need to protect yourself from both outcomes. Every economy in the world is on the same trajectory as Argentina, perhaps just moving a bit more slowly. That's today's economic update. It's Wednesday, May the 9th, 2018, and I'm Dennis Tubbergen.